Hi everyone, welcome to a new tutorial. Thanks for joining me today in a new video. So today I am going to be drawing an eye, a human eye, with pastel pencils on pastel mat. And I have drawn lots of eyes before, but I've never drawn an eye with pastels in color. And this is actually the first time that I will be mixing skin colors or skin tones in color. So I'm very excited for this one. I really like this drawing. I really like doing it. So in this video I will talk you through the process a little bit and my choices that I made and the process in my head when I was drawing this, because I didn't know how I was going to do this before I started. So very interesting. This is a Patreon tutorial for the $10 tier. I always think it's very interesting to see someone else figure out how to do something and then you can learn from that. So this project is available on Patreon from start to finish in real time. So if you're interested in following along with that, you can have a look at the link in the description. And let's get started. So I am using Stabilo Carpatello pastel pencils, as always, basically. I am using a white Faber-Castell Pitt pastel pencil for the white details, just because I lost my white Stabilo pencil. I have no idea where it is and I didn't get a new one yet, so that's why I used a white Faber-Castell Pitt. And then further in the project I'm also working with a violet Faber-Castell Pitt because I think that's a really nice color. The Stabilo set doesn't really have a violet tone like that, so I'll add a violet tone from the Pitt range in there as well. And that's basically it for the pencils. And then I'm using pastel mat. I'm drawing on pastel mat. It's the color light gray. And the size is about 6 by 8 inches. So I've made the sketch. I did it quite quickly, freehand. Which is also included in the tutorial, of course. And I've decided to work with a tone that is slightly darker than the color of the pastel mat. So I chose a warm gray beige tone to do the sketch with. And when the color of the sketch is very close to the color of the background, it's easier to make any corrections if necessary. So that's why I always choose to go for a color that is close to the background or the pastel matte color. Alright, so then it was time to start with the coloring. So I decided to start with the white of the eye, and I gave that a base tone, also the inner corner of the eye. So the white of the eye is never white. You can see the reference photo below in the left corner. You can see that there's a very bluish glow on there in the white of the eye. So it's super important to never just draw the white of the eye white, because that's going to look very unnatural. There's always shadows in it, always different tones and veins and details. So I went for a gray base on the white of the eye, and then I also added blue around the iris, and then quite a lot of pink as well in the corners. And actually later I will even darken it up more because I figured that it wasn't dark enough. But I just started off with the base tone, and then you can always make adjustments later. And then in the inner corner of the eye I went for multiple tones of like red and pink. For that it's also very important to not only use one color but mix in several. So I went in with more toned down pinks and purples, and then also a little bit of a brighter red later. Alright, onto the iris. There are a lot of colors in the iris, mainly mixes between blue and green. And I started out by first just making sure that the shape of the iris is correct. So I started with the outer edge, and then I filled in the base layers. So I went for dark blues, also some very nice mix between blue and green, nice dark turquoise color. And I made sure that the under layers for the iris were darker than what I eventually want the iris to be. So I start off with the dark undertone, and then I can do my lighter details on top of that. And for the very darkest shadows on the iris, I also added a very dark purplish gray. That's in the Carpatello set. That's number 770, which I really like for dark shadows instead of black. And then after the base layers were done, I could do a little bit of blending with my finger and then go ahead and add some of the details. Also, when you look at eyes, you can see that the edge of the iris is never like completely sharp. It's never a super sharp edge. There's always a bit of blurriness between that transition from the iris into the white of the eye. So I also made sure to put that in, so to make the transition a little smoother. Then by adding some blue around the iris, you can create that smoother transition as well. And then I went ahead with adding some more vibrancy and more detail in the iris. So this takes lots of layers to build up, so it's very important to keep your patience with this and really work from dark to light. And I added multiple colors. So first I started adding those dark shapes that you see in the iris, all muscles and shadows. So I added those first, those dark shapes, and then I could go in between with my lighter colors and lighten up in between, so create those highlights. And then there's also a big highlight at the top of the iris. Also, that one is not white, it's not a white highlight. It's actually quite blue, dark blue, so I made sure to add multiple tones of blue in that big highlight at the top. And then the highlight in the pupil, that one is very bright, so that one I made white. And then the pupil I filled in first with 770, and then I went on top with black. And then I decided to leave the eye itself and move on to the rest around the eye. And then when you've put in the skin tones around, it becomes easier to judge if you can go any darker or lighter with the eye itself. So I moved on quickly with the skin. And first I mapped out the shape of the crease of the eyelid. And that crease, that shadow, was pretty reddish looking. So I went in with quite a bright red-brown tone to create that crease. And then I started with the skin tones. So I had to search a little bit. I had to experiment to see what worked together and what didn't. It's super important when you draw skin tones, that's what I learned in the past, that you don't just use one color. There's not one skin tone or skin color. You have to mix in multiple tones together, and actually colors that you don't expect. So I mixed in blues, I mixed in violet and red and pink. So I decided to make it quite colorful. So I made the skin quite colorful. If you look at the reference photo below, you can see many colors in there. So I decided to make sure to really put those colors in there. So for the upper eyelid, you can see that I put in a bluish glow at the top, so above the eye. And then I also put some blue in the inner corner of the eye. And then also I really like the tone 642 from Stabilo Carpatello. That's a really nice pink tone, but very neutral and a bit darker. So I could use that for the details and for some of the darker shadows in the skin, especially in the inner corner of the eye. And then I could start building up. So the skin, I decided to not build up from dark to light that much. I started off carefully with some lighter tones and then build up my darker and more vibrant tones on top of that to make sure that the skin didn't become too vibrant right from the start. So I went in a little bit more careful with that. And then I could start making the skin very deep and very colorful, and also add some of the veins on the eyelid as well. So my plan with this drawing was not to make it a photocopy of the reference photo. I don't think that was really necessary with this study. I wanted to make it a nice drawing by itself instead of just copying the reference. So what's very important when drawing skin and eyes is to put the small highlights in. So on the top eyelid and in the inner corner of the eye, I could see some very small highlights, and those I put in with white. Also at the bottom of the eyeball. And as long as you're building up your tones and colors with light pressure, you will still be able to add your white details on top. If you press too much from the start, it will become really hard to add lighter details. And then I decided to leave the top eyelid and move on to the bottom area underneath the eye. So you can see some wrinkles there. This eye looks a little bit tired, so I decided to, or I tried to recreate that, and I enhanced those wrinkles underneath the eye a little bit, and I went in there with very bright, vibrant pink tones. So I started off with some darker purples and pinks to map out the shapes of the wrinkles, those darker shadows underneath the eye. And then I went on top with the more neutral colors, like some beige, some warmer beige, that I could also use as a bit of a blending tone to smooth out the color. And then it's good to keep looking at your drawing as a whole, see if there's anything that's off, and see if everything fits together nicely when it comes to colors and contrast. And then I kept adjusting. So also below the eye in the inner corner you can see very much violet, and then on the outer color below you can see more like a bluish and even greenish tone, especially in the outer corner of the eye. I didn't put in any green. I didn't think that was necessary, but you see, I know an artist that uses green as an undertone for all his portraits, so often green is used when drawing skin, but I wasn't really confident enough to add green yet, so I just worked with blue. And eventually I think the skin tone turned out really nice, maybe a tad too pink, but I quite like it. I like the dramatic and colorful effects, and I will definitely do more skin tones or eyes with pastels in color, or maybe even in colored pencil to see how much improvement I can make. Alright, so then I moved on to the lashes. And the lashes are tricky here because they don't go up a lot, they come forward a lot, so you don't see that curve in them that much. And I started out with the 770 for the lashes, so no black yet. And that will create a little bit more depth in the lashes instead of going in with black right away. That could be a bit flat looking. So first I went in and put all of the lashes in with the 770, and I looked very closely at the direction. And it's important to put them in with quick motions. So quick and confident motions to make sure that you don't create squiggly lines. And make sure that the pencil is very sharp. That's very important. I used the Faber-Castell Color Grip Sharpener, which I really like. Alright, so then when I was happy with the basic shape of the lashes, I could go in with black and darken them up a bit more. Especially the base or the start of the hair. So the tip is sometimes a little bit lighter. So I focused my black on the base of the hairs, the very start of them. And then made sure to make the lashes look a little bit more full. Also, when drawing lashes, it's super important to not make them come straight out of the eye. So they start actually a little bit above the eye in the eyelid and not in the eye itself. So make sure to leave a little bit of space in between your lashes and the eye. That looks more natural. And the same goes for the bottom lashes as well. Alright, so then I left the eyelashes. I will come back to them later. First, I wanted to move on to the eyebrow and draw the skin upwards a little bit more. So I had sketched the eyebrow beforehand, so I knew where it was about to start. And then I went over my sketch with some more of the skin tones, because you can see the skin through the eyebrows. The eyebrow wasn't very full, so you could see quite large pieces of skin in between the hairs. So it's quite important that you draw the skin first and then the eyebrow on top of that. And then for the base of the eyebrow, I used a very dark gray, a warm gray, because I could see a warm glow in the eyebrow. And then I just started to draw the hairs. Super important to see or to observe in which direction the hairs are growing. And when I look at this now, I see that I could have made the hairs a little bit longer and a little bit less curvy. I went a little bit too curvy with my lines. But oh well, it's a good lesson for the next time. Also, I didn't want to make the eyebrow too full. I left it quite undetailed, the eyebrow. And then I went around the eye, add some more detail, and also the bottom lashes. And I did those with the dark gray to start with. And then I went on top of that with black to darken some of the bottom eyelashes. And then after that, I picked my Cretacolor black pastel pencil, which is even blacker than the Stabilo one. It's a lot blacker actually. And then I went in and really darkened up the lashes some more. And then I went in the eyebrow a little bit more and added some darker hairs. Alright, so that concludes this drawing for today. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. It took 2 hours and 20 minutes to create, and I really love the process of this one. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.